All right, welcome everyone. I just want to check if someone can confirm that you can see my PowerPoint on the screen currently. Someone let me know verbally, yes or no. Yes, already got a yes there. It was first time doing one of these events on Leland, so I want to make sure everything's working well. Well, with that, we're right at noon here Central Time. We'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we have folks that will continue to join. I believe this is being recorded as well. I think we had about 150 or so folks sign up. So we'll see what happens. But again, welcome and thank you for sharing part of your Saturday with me. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump right into the content. My name is Bryan Stewart. I've been on Leland for a couple months now. This is my first live event. And as you can see, this event is all about Resumes 101, mastering the applicant tracking systems or systems. So with that, we'll jump right into the content to make sure we have plenty of time to cover the content with a few minutes for Q&A at the end. So here's what you can expect. I'll give you a brief intro and overview of myself, why you might want to listen to what I have to say in terms of this topic. We'll certainly talk about the ATS systems, or the black boxes, a lot of folks refer to it. We'll talk about the purpose, structure, formatting, and content of resumes. And all of my feedback will be really in the context of how to optimize your resume for an applicant tracking system. We'll talk about a few tools at the end, and really we'll finish with key takeaways from this 30 minutes together. So why should you care what I have to say on this topic? I've been an executive and entrepreneur, mentor and coach for 30 plus years. Prior to my time in business, I spent about 6.5 years in the U.S. military as a Marine Corps infantry officer. But more importantly, I've recruited probably dozens of individuals, all levels of an organization over my career. Mentored literally hundreds of individuals, particularly those in career transition. And probably most relevant, I reviewed more than 7,000 resumes on various resume platforms for individuals. So I feel like I have some good experience, lessons learned that I'm sharing with all of you today here on Leland. So what is the applicant tracking system? A lot of folks refer to it as the black box. I'm sure a lot of you may be familiar with, you go to a company's website to apply for a job or on one of the various job platforms, and they want you to input your information either directly into the applicant tracking system or by uploading your resume, and then the applicant tracking system will scan or parse is the word they use, key information from your resume. So what is an applicant tracking system? If you're not familiar, it's essentially a technology platform used by, I would say, most companies today to process and manage large volumes of application data. So essentially what the ATS does, as you can see, it scans and extracts data, trying to standardize the data set, make it sortable, make it searchable. Again, that process is called parsing. You may hear me refer to that throughout the session. Generally, I would say the overarching feedback for you related to a resume that you're preparing for an applicant tracking system is simpler is better. And then we'll talk quite a bit about studying the job description or posting closely. And we'll get into all the details here that you see around keywords, hard skills, experience, etc. So essentially, that's what an applicant tracking system is. Again, the context of most of my feedback around resumes is how to optimize your resume so that it parses most optimally and you have the best chance of ranking as high as you can against the criteria set up in the job description to either get a phone screen or a first interview or to move beyond just being ruled out for whatever reason. So overview, I'm sure most of you know what the purpose of a resume. I like to just level set. It's, originally established as a standard way to tell your career story, more or less. I know there are lots and lots of formats and ideas and probably opinions about resumes, how to tell your story, highlight your skills, experiences, etc. In my view, and the purpose of this call is how to help you accurately get your resume parsed and get you to what I call a first or second date. The purpose of your resume is not to get married, so it doesn't need to be 5 pages telling a potential employer, every single thing about your career history. You really want it to be something that makes you interesting enough and that you match well enough against the job description or posting that you get put into the next part of the process pile, whether that's a phone screen, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a Zoom interview or what have you. In my opinion, that's really the purpose of the resume, is to get you from you comparing yourself with everyone else that's applied to make it past that first screening where you actually have a conversation, hopefully with another human being. And then really, conveying key information. Important that it be very concise and curated. I view the resume as a living document, much like your LinkedIn profile, if you have one, and we'll mention that later. That it shouldn't just be a one and done. It should be something that continues to evolve. Number one, as you gain more experience or gain different skills, licensures, et cetera. And probably most importantly is tailored to the specific job description you're going after. Certainly needs to be achievement and outcome focused. And then I believe it should speak to the intended audience. So put yourself in the position of the person that you might either know or you might imagine is the hiring manager, and what you see in a job description and how your experiences, skills, et cetera, and the story that your resume is telling, speaks to that particular individual. Sorry for that. Here we go, back on track. So let's get into the structure of a resume. I'm really going to be giving you a lot of, I'll call, foundational information. And then as a follow-up, if you're interested, I could provide some examples, but I'm not really going over a resume on screen, really giving you good information, I believe, about different aspects of the resume that you can then apply to your own resume, depending on where you're at in the development cycle. So overview, resume styles that I think parse most accurately and most effectively in an applicant tracking systems are one that are simply chronological based, or a hybrid resume, which would be more for early career individuals who may not have a substantial amount of work experience, let's say 5 years or less, where you're trying to combine maybe internships or educational experience with maybe more limited work experience, as compared to someone that's maybe got 5 years or more, where it simply could be a reverse chronological listing of your work experiences. The other types are functional resumes, what's called a CV or curriculum vitae, and then a federal resume. Really, those are not ideal for parsing. I would not recommend submitting those formats at all for an applicant tracking system. Functional obviously is more for a specific role or function. And I think the perception at times is if you're doing a functional resume, you quote unquote may have something to hide from a career history. CV generally for more academic or even healthcare related things, physicians, those types of things, where it's a lot more about publications, speaking events that you've had. Definitely would recommend against the CV format for this purpose. And then a federal resume, if you're not familiar, there's a very specific format that most federal jobs require that is definitely not optimized for, I'll say, a standard applicant tracking system. So general structure and outline, I highly recommend. Keep in mind, if you take away nothing else from this 30 minutes, is simpler is better. Again, simpler is better in terms of formatting, style, fonts, etc. So general structure at the top, simple name and contact information. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. A brief summary and objective statement. I do have a sample of that coming up. And then your work experience in reverse chronological order. And I'll give you the exact format that I recommend. That followed by your educational experiences. And at the bottom would be a sort of summary section or a catch-all for skills, experiences, certifications, licensures, depending on your background and the kind of role you're applying to. Those may have more or less significance than the other content above. So in terms of formatting, through my 7,000 reviews I've done, I've seen a lot of different formats, as you might imagine. People think I need to be really creative. I have to catch the eye of the person reviewing the resume. And I think that's actually quite the opposite. Again, simpler is better. Highly complex, highly formatted resumes tend to not parse well at all in an applicant tracking system. So you may be thinking, I've got this, went on Canva, I got this really slick looking resume format. I'm positioning, I've got a photo. And then knowing how that data shows up in the system, really shooting yourself in the foot. So again, simpler is better. Highly recommend not including any sort of photo for multiple reasons. One, age discrimination, depending on where you're at in your career, or even conscious or unconscious bias, depending on your photo. Maybe they don't look what you look like. Obviously, there's the obvious age, sex, race, you name it. So it's just better not to have a photo on your resume. Definitely recommend against including any references or even the statement available upon request. No personal info. So, don't put your date of birth or your social security number, or even in this case, recommend against putting even your full home address. Just city and state is sufficient to help protect your privacy. No borders, no shading, no graphics. I would even recommend against a header or footer. Generally, when content gets parsed into the applicant tracking system, it sort of goes on one workspace or screen. So it's not really parsing it page by page. It's just scanning the data. So a lot of times I see if you have a header or footer, it ends up just showing up in really random places within the applicant tracking system. So again, simpler is better. You see the guidance here on margins, spacing, fonts. Again, don't go crazy with some handwritten font or, I know there's a lot of fonts out there. Just again, simpler is better. Arial, Tahoma, Calibri, things like that, even Times New Roman, although that I think can make your resume appear a little bit dated if someone's actually looking at the document. And then the length recommendation, if you're 5 years or less of work experience, generally recommend trying to fit your resume on one page, 2 pages if you have 5 years or more. Maybe if you're a very, very senior person, a CXO level, CEO, CHRO, et cetera, and you've got a lot of experience, maybe 3 pages. Or if you're going into a very, very complex role that might require more detailed representation of your technical skills, for example, then I would maybe consider 3 pages, but generally speaking, would highly recommend keeping it to 2 pages, top to bottom. In terms of style, you don't want to use any first person, so no personal pronouns, so no I, me, or my. You want to try as much as possible to use action verbs and be mindful of your verb tenses, depending on if you're currently in a role, and it's something that you're doing right now, you'd certainly want to use a present tense verb versus something you've done in the past, or for a historical opportunity or job, you'd want to use a past tense. And you can generally omit articles to try to save space and overall density of your resume. So, those things like that, the more of those you can eliminate, the better in terms of formatting. Other things in terms of contact information at the top, again, simpler is better. I recommend 2 lines of contact information. Your name at the top, just first name, last name, or if you want to include an initial, or if you have credentials, like if you're a physician or you have a PhD or you have a project management certification or other credentials that would be recognized or important to the job you're applying to, I would recommend including those. I would not recommend, for example, including like BS if you have a bachelor's degree, or MBA. Would likely only if you have a PhD or another professional degree or a certification, again, that's highly relevant to the job, then I would include it with your name. Second line, and you can vary the format here, but just simple formatting of your phone number, your email. And I would make sure that's contemporary and professional email. I see some folks, older, more experienced individuals, I'll say, who might be using an AOL or a Yahoo or a Hotmail email extension. I would highly recommend getting a Gmail or something more contemporary, like an Apple email or anything really more or less to try to hedge against any age discrimination by using one of those more, I would say, older email platforms. Then again, no need for your full home address, just city and state. And then URLs of any appropriate things. If you have a LinkedIn profile, I recommend hyperlinking your LinkedIn profile URL to the keyword LinkedIn. Or, for example, if you're in graphic design or some other thing where you might have a portfolio, you could hyperlink your portfolio. Or if you have your own website, or you have a particular social media channel that you feel like is relevant, hyperlink that content. But again, all in one line. So at the top, 2 very concise lines of your contact information. Immediately below that, as you can see, a summary and objective statement. So not bullet points, not 10 lines of content. 3 to 5 sentences is what I recommend. No personal pronouns, really focused on keywords and hard skills that are directly correlated to the job description you're seeking. So study the job posting or job description, sort of mine the keywords and hard skills that they're expecting to see, and then try to match your summary and objective statement with skills, experience, et cetera, that are in your background that correlate and are going to match as closely as possible to that job description. Also recommend not including anything more than 15 years in your past. So, in this case, you see the example, you wouldn't want to say professional with 30 plus years of experience. And the rationale for that is, again, to help hedge against age discrimination. So only putting 15 plus years here, and then also not including content on your resume that is generally more than 15 years in the past. Number one reason, again, age discrimination. Number two, generally speaking, employers are more interested in what you've done more recently. The only exception would be if somehow the job you're applying for is more directly related to skills further back in your history, then you may want to consider pulling those forward or mentioning those. Otherwise, I would not include anything more than 15 years in your past.
Bryan, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We actually cannot see any of your screens that you've been presenting on this presentation.
Well, thank you for letting me know.
You're welcome.
Through the presentation. Let me see if I can fix that. Let me stop sharing and reshare. Thank you for letting me know, whoever let me know. I'm not even able to see the notes here. All right, let's try again. Share screen.
We could see your home slide, like the first slide, but we couldn't see as you were presenting.
Okay, let me see. This is not what I want to share here. Can you see it now? Or are you still seeing the Leland?
Not the present. Yeah, just the, we don't see the presentation.
Yeah, let me. Let me try again here. Share screen. Is that popping up now or no?
Yes, it is.
Okay, yes. Well, thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, and I'll be happy to share the slides since you missed the first half of what I've disclosed so far. But anyway, thank you for letting me know. So jumping back in, this is what I was just referring to. This example here around number of years of experience tailoring the job description. In this case, I've tried to give a good example of a lot of different things. Someone who's a military veteran who happens to be bilingual, and then you see sort of the skills that they're bringing to the table. So generally, the first sentence, who you are and what you're bringing to the table from a professional point of view. Second sentence or third sentence, generally packed full of hard skills and keywords directly related to the job description. And then I also recommend at the end trying to be really explicit about what it is you're looking for and where. Looking for a new career or maybe a new remote career opportunity with XYZ company, and then reiterate the job title that you're specifically applying to. Or if it's not a remote role, hey, I'm looking for a new job in the Detroit, Michigan area, et cetera. So this is a good example of what I recommend as a concise summary and objective statement paragraph at the top. Again, not bullets, not 10 lines, but maybe 3 to 5 is generally what we recommend. In terms of content, so at the top, again, key contact information, summary and objective statement, immediately followed by reverse chronological order work experience. What I recommend there, again, is very simple. The title of the role and keeping the title simple, and think like what's going to be the most accurate, simple job title that the applicant tracking system will recognize. So keeping it really simple, not having a bunch of slashes or ands like, well, I'm a supervisor and a quality assurance tech, and like the simpler the better. The name of the company or organization, city and state only. You don't need an address, zip code, et cetera. And then the dates, and very specifically spelling out the month with the 4-digit year, whether that's just say a 3-letter abbreviation or even spelling out the entire month. The reason that's important is you want to make sure as best you can that the applicant tracking system parses the dates most accurately. So if you're still in the job, it would be, spelled out month, 4-digit year to present. Or if you're no longer in the role, it would be the month, and then the 4-digit year to, whenever you left that particular role. Following the demographics would be bullet points in what I like to call is the WHO format, really a little acronym for what, how, and outcomes. 2 lines or less for each bullet. You don't want to have like a 5-line bullet. Ideally, if you can fit it on 1 line across the page, great. 2 lines, I think, is acceptable. No punctuation is required or needed. Again, no first person, no personal pronouns. So I've given you example here. The different colors. The yellow is the what. This is what this person did or does, depending on the context. How they did it, and be specific as you can, whether that's specific skills, experiences, tools, technologies, networks, whatever it is that helps you do that thing. And then probably most important is the outcome. And the more detailed you can be here, the better. And I always like to recommend both a numeric quantification of the outcomes whenever possible, followed by some time dimension. As you can see in this example, sort of a sales-related example. And then I always recommend, if you're going to put a percentage, that you put from what to what. So if you grew sales by 20%, maybe put the actual data. My logic for that is it adds credibility to the statement because sometimes percentages can be misleading. You can have a huge percent increase and it not be a very large increase in terms of real numbers. So that's a detailed recommendation I tend to make as well. Following your work experiences, again, reverse chronological order, no more than 15 years of experience would be your education section, and descending academic merit. So your highest degree obtained first, in a very simple format, just the degree spelled out, again, for the same reason for your title, just the more explicit you can make it for the applicant tracking system. So for example, spelling out Bachelor of Arts versus BA, or Certified Public Accountant versus CPA for certification. The institution name, the city and state or country, depending on where you obtained the degree, or if it was a remote or online, you can indicate that. And then I generally recommend not including the dates, but only if they're certainly more than 5 years in the past. I would not include the dates. Say, for example, you just recently completed your PhD or an MBA, then those dates might be relevant for the role you're applying to. Otherwise, I would leave those off. If you've got incomplete education, say you started a bachelor's degree and you went 3 years and you just, for whatever reason, weren't able to complete it, we recommend just putting, how many credits you completed of how many were required to give the reader some idea of how far along you were. In that case, say you were a work in progress on your bachelor's degree, but maybe you completed an associate's degree. I would include the associate's degree. But as you see in the first bullet point, if you have a bachelor, master's, or a PhD, I generally do not recommend including the associate's degree, and would only recommend including a high school diploma or a GED or another equivalent degree if that's the only other education you've completed. Definitely don't want to leave it blank. I've seen a number of resumes where they just don't include an education section. I would highly recommend against that. Make sure you complete with whatever you have completed. No bullets or other information. I would say, unless maybe you think it's really relevant that you had like a 3.8 GPA, I would not include that. I don't know that those have much merit. Unless, for example, you're applying for a top 5 consulting firm and they expect to see, a top tier MBA school and a 3.5 or better. Otherwise, I would not include a GPA anywhere in the education section. In my opinion, that's just checking the box. They're looking for someone that has this level of education. Do you have it or not? Or do you have something equivalent experience or certifications wise that would make you a good candidate? Other things beyond the resume or the education would be skills, licensures, and certifications. I recommend no more than 10 bulleted hard skills. I've seen people with like 40. They try to list every single skill imaginable, and maybe half of those aren't even relevant to the job they're applying to. So I would focus on highly relevant skills to the job you're seeking, focused on hard skills versus soft skills. Again, don't include things that aren't relevant to the job you're applying to. Then if you have other things like certifications, licensures, or if you're are very facile with a particular technology, particularly like related to IT folks or even accounting, you have experience with a particular ERP system or Salesforce, those things can be highly relevant, particularly if they're noted in the job description. We're looking for someone that as a Salesforce administrator, whatever the case may be. Any other information like awards, publications, patents, certainly anything personal, like, I like to ice skate or I enjoy cooking. Highly recommend including anything like that unless it's really, really relevant and directly tied to the job you're applying to. A couple tools I want to mention, none specific because I feel like there's just so many now that have come out in the last even 12 months. I'm sure most of you have heard of ChatGPT or other similar AI programs. I know there are a plethora of job-specific programs that you can go and upload a job description, upload your resume, and it will give you sort of optimized content. May or may not be exactly in the format I'm recommending, but generally will do a really good job of picking out what's most relevant and giving you either new bullets or tailoring the content that you already have to best match the job description. Highly recommend Grammarly if you're not using Grammarly or a similar tool. And that's really around spelling, punctuation, grammar, syntax, things like that. Grammarly is a great tool to help you with your final version of your resume to ensure you don't have any errors in that regard that might trip you up in the screening or interview process. Indeed has a great platform both for resume reviews and lots of helpful content around what's expected, particularly in context of an applicant tracking system. Then I'll just say generally LinkedIn, that's like sort of a whole nother probably Leland session is, optimizing your LinkedIn profile. My main feedback there would be just to make sure that what's on your resume generally matches exactly what's on your LinkedIn profile from a chronological point of view, from a job point of view. Obviously two different formats and platforms, but you don't want to have your resume say one thing and your LinkedIn profile represent something else. So key takeaways as we wrap up here. Number one, I encourage you to think like your target. Think like you were the hiring manager or even the HR person who might be screening or doing the initial assessment of candidates. How are you going to ensure your content is optimized to sort of get to the top of the list and get to the next part of the application process? Again, make your resume a living document, continue to tailor it, both with the job you're applying to and as you enhance skills, experiences, etc. Again, simpler is better. Focus on the outcomes in terms of your who bullets, not just, I've seen people more or less copy and paste the job description contents. Don't do that. Be very specific about what you've done, how you've done it, and the outcomes you've delivered. And I think that's probably the most valuable thing you can do to best position you for whatever job you're applying to. Be specific in those bullets. The more specific, granular, and quantified, the better. Again, mine and match keywords, both for your summary and objective statement, for your who bullets, as well as your skills that you would list below your education. Again, make sure your resume matches your LinkedIn profile. Leverage the available tools. I think they're better now than they've ever been. ChatGPT and others, lots of those. And I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. I would say when you get to your final draft of your resume, give it to someone who doesn't know anything about maybe you or your background or the job you're applying to, and just have them read it. Does this make sense? What's your impression when you read my resume? What story does it tell about me? And sometimes I think the best insights are from people that know the least about maybe your industry, your job, or your background. So I would say don't be afraid to ask for help from colleagues, friends, family, et cetera, as you're in the job search or resume optimization process. The only thing I'll mention, obviously this is on Leland. I'll have my Leland link here if you're interested in other things that I might be able to help you with. Certainly done a lot of career coaching, career transition coaching, leadership development, strategic planning. And then I do have another event in 2 weeks around leadership coaching 101 based on my experience as an executive coach, kind of what you should look for in selecting a coach, how to optimize that relationship and maximize the value of your investment, whether it's here on LinkedIn or some other platform or just a one-on-one relationship. That's the purpose of that event. And I'll have my other contact information on the slides as well. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there are any questions in our last few minutes here.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Imani. I just had a question around your comment about LinkedIn optimization versus resume. So I was recently laid off, and I do have like a freelance position, like I do freelance in the meantime while looking for full-time work. However, I've noticed that when doing job applications, some companies really don't want you to be participating in outside employment of any type. So what do you recommend for like being honest there? Like I won't always put that I freelance on my resume because I don't want that to be like seen as competition when applying for jobs, but it is on my LinkedIn.
My opinion is I would rather include it than not. Um, and maybe instead of using the word freelance, I don't know if you have like an LLC that you operate under, or if
Yeah,
you're on one of the platforms, you may even want to just say like founder or owner or principal of that entity versus freelance. And then in your, in the who bullet, you can just sort of explain the kind of work that you do. So it's not as obvious. And then I would assume that would come up maybe in an interview. I think that's more common now than it's ever been. People freelancing or having multiple side hustles or whatever you would call it. So in my opinion, I would definitely include it, maybe in a different way than just saying freelance. And then just, be prepared to talk about or explain it and really highlight the value to the employer of that freelance experience in whatever you're applying for. Like, well, here's what I've learned as a freelancer that I'm going to directly apply to whatever it is they're going to hire you to do, if that makes sense. Does that help, or did that answer your question?
yes, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So
Yes.
I am working on a resume where I am completely pivoting from where I've spent my last 10 years of my career in the nonprofit sector. I'm transitioning to a corporate role,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily even connected to corporate giving, which I was originally playing with. Anyways, what's your overall to benefit the entire group here? What's your advice for people in my situation that want to pivot to a new career when they're tailoring their resume?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say two things. One, I would highlight that in your summary, like in one of those sentences, maybe like the last sentence, seeking to make a career pivot from whatever to whatever, so that you're very explicit. Hey, I am making a career pivot. And then I would just generally recommend in your content and the way you're presenting your story that you really try to focus more on the transferable skills, more so than maybe the title or, whatever. So I would just, again, it kind of goes back to the same principles, really study the job description. And, even though you may not be from that industry or from that role, I would assume there are highly transferable skills. And that's what you would want to highlight both in your summaries and in your bullets, so that even within the ATS, you're still going to parse and match well, even though it may not be exactly what, the industry you're going in, if that makes sense. Does that help? Yeah.
If I may, I saw that you wanted or that you think it's good if someone were to format the education in one line, but the way that I have it is I have the university in bold, and then under that I have my degree. Is that acceptable, or is there also a problem with like the parsing, the AI tool that these recruiters use?
I don't know that I could say that doing that way is going to, deprecate the parsing. This is just what I found most useful that I've recommended is just the simpler the better on one line. And I even go so far as I don't recommend any bold, because in the applicant tracking system, it doesn't parse any of the bolds, the fonts, the bullets. It's simply looking for text. So that's why I would just say the simpler the better, the fewer lines the better. And even in the case of the way I'm recommending that you provide the information, simple demographics, summary, work experience, education, and skills. I recommend that because most of the platforms that I work within, that's the order in which it's looking for the information. So in my mind, the simpler you can make it and the more aligned it's going to be in its original form to what the ATS is looking for, the better chance you have that your data is going to be accurate. So I don't know if that answer. I don't think it's not a no that's really going to mess it up. I think it's probably just what's going to be optimal. But if you're comfortable with the way it is and you've had good results, I would say stick with it. But otherwise, I would just kind of recommend going with what I've seen work best in most ATS platforms.
And do you recommend the education going before the experience or below the experience?
It would be after the experience, with the only possible exception, say someone is a more early career person and they don't have a lot of quote unquote work experience other than maybe something they did in college or an internship. That would probably be the only time I would recommend maybe putting below the summary, putting your education. Maybe someone just completed a PhD, or you went back and you got a secondary degree in machine learning or something that's like directly related to the role you're going after. Then I would put the education prior. But generally, I recommend that format. The summary, experience, education, and then skills, kind of in that flow, pretty much without fail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you allow me to give you my question, or is it too late?
Sure. No, as long as you folks have questions, I'm happy to stay on as long as we have questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So basically, I'm a senior student, and I am involved in many student clubs. Or not many. I'm involved in 3 student clubs as either a member or a vice president or president of those clubs. And I'm also involved in a student consultant initiative where basically we do consulting work with actual companies and clients, exactly like any other consulting firm. But obviously it's for students. So my question is, which of these would you recommend for me to put in experience, and which of those would you recommend to put in volunteering or like involvement section?
In your case, I would probably recommend, just instead of putting work experience, labeling that section as experience, and then putting those roles or opportunities, think of them almost as jobs. If you feel like they have enough substance, like you can come up with resume bullets, who bullets that would add value. So I don't know if that makes sense. So again, just call your experience section and have those as things that are relevant to the role you're seeking. I would definitely recommend that versus adding another section like volunteer or clubs or projects. Again, because it doesn't normally recommend, or those sections don't always parse well. I'll just leave it at that. So does that answer your question?
Understood. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, sir, thank you for the presentation. Just quick question. I want to see if you could point us to a good example resume that kind of summarizes this format and all your recommendations.
Yeah, I'll provide one of those. I think I have the ability in the Leland to email everyone that either registered or attended. So I will send out a PDF of my presentation, as well as I'll just call an anonymized sample resume that would be a good representation of what I've described, that you could take a look at and kind of edit, I guess, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and I see someone else. Abila had a question. Post a link to the recommended use of color coding. I would say that might be useful if you're submitting a resume, say as a PDF, you're emailing it to someone, and they're going to like print it or read it. I wouldn't recommend that for just the resume that you're going to submit to an applicant tracking system, again, because those formatting things generally don't parse it all in the ATS. So I guess that's another general point. You may want to have multiple versions of your resume. One that's like, I'll just say generally a Word version or a PDF that you meet someone and they're like, hey, send me your resume, I want to look at it. That could be maybe more formatted, like for example the color coding or what have you. And then you have one that's just for submitting online for an applicant tracking system. That I would say would recommend to be as closely aligned with what I'm recommending as possible. Any final questions or comments?
Hi, Bryan. Thank you for the presentation. I had a quick question. I mean, I'm a recent grad student, and I've worked for a couple of years post my undergrad previously. So, and my most recent job is in connection with the grad school, but not exactly with my previous job. So
Yeah.
when I'm sending in applications right now, everyone almost wants the most relevant or industry experience. So, I mean, my question here is, like, if I'm going after, for example, healthcare, where I initially worked, how do I change or tweak my current job to kind of say that, okay, that is my primary expertise, but just to show that I've been in the similar path of engineering or analytics rather than being distorted by the industry.
I think I understand what you're asking. I guess the main recommendations would be, one, trying to make that really clear in your summary. Like if you have X number of years of experience, say in healthcare, but you're looking for a job, and I'm not sure what the other domain is, you may say, seasoned whatever information technology program management professional with 10 years of total experience. And then maybe in the next sentence, you could be reference your more relevant experience to this particular thing that you're applying to. I don't know if that answers your question, so that you can help draw the line between the two things. Yes, I have all this experience, but I also have this experience that's really relevant to what I want to do. And then, from a resume point of view, it could just be simply de-emphasizing the things, like maybe less bullet points for the things that you don't really want to talk about as much. And then having more content, for example, for the section that's really more related to what you want to be doing. I don't know if that's answering your question. I think I understood your question, but does that help? Did that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what I was trying to understand. Like, should my most recent job have most points, or the most relevant one should have points? So, yeah.
Generally, the most recent one should have more, but I think in your case, I would put the relevant ones that are maybe skills that carry over, and then spend more time in real estate on the resume about the one that's related to the role you're going after.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we'll take one more question, then we'll wrap up.
Just to make sure, is this meeting recorded, and will it be shared with us?
I believe it's recorded. I don't know if there's anyone from Leland on. I know when I logged in, it said it's recording. So I assume so, but this is my first one I've done on Leland, so I don't have 100% knowledge of that. But at the very least, I'll be able to send out, again, the slides and an example resume if that's helpful.
Thank you.
I do see one last comment here from, should we keep work experience that are not relevant? I would say it's not necessary to get rid of it unless it's more than 15 years in the past. But similar to the last question, I would just focus more on the more recent, and then say the things that are 8 years before in manufacturing. You could either have less bullets, say like 2 to 3 bullets for that, or you could even summarize that portion of your career in a section that's just called other career experiences. And you would just, instead of listing all 8 years worth of jobs, if you had multiples, it could just be a bucket, more like a career chapter, my manufacturing experience. And then you could put in experiences or skills that you think, again, are relevant skills to the job that you're looking for now. So I see that. And then I think Alam has their hand raised. Alam, are you there? You have a question? Maybe not. Maybe dropped off. Okay. Again, I apologize for the screen confusion. Thanks to whoever let me know, or else we would have gone the whole time. But again, I'll send out the slides and a sort of a sample resume template. And then, of course, if anyone wants additional time, feel free to hook up with me on LinkedIn or the other information in my on my slide deck there for my other company. So with that, I'll wrap up and wish you all a pleasant Saturday afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.